everyone. I'm Barbara Phillips with Nurse Practitioner Business Owner at npbusiness.org, and I'm here today with Don Self, and we've got a question to answer for you guys. So, Don, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Don, as you said, and I've been a reimbursement consultant and coder and biller for 38 years, helping providers in the area of reimbursement revenue.
Excellent, excellent. And who's that you have in your lap?
This is Sassy. Sassy's got a little collar on because she had to have a knee surgery a few days ago, and we don't want her eating on the cast. So she's
Excellent.
a little 15-month-old.
All right, we had to bring her in since she's here. Okay, so my question today is, and as we've discussed before, there's a lot of providers, physicians, PAs, nurse practitioners, everybody who want to not do insurances. And so they will see people on an out-of-network plan. But there's a lot of confusion about just what that means. So can you tell us what it means to be out-of-network?
Well, there's, as you pointed out, there's two different types. There's in-network means that you're participating, you've enrolled with a plan as being one of the in-network providers. If you haven't done that, then you're out of network. Say, for instance, with Blue Cross Blue Shield, you could just be out of network because you never signed a contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield.
And so as an out-of-network provider, that would mean that I could charge the patient whatever I wanted to, just like if I was just strictly a cash practice, correct?
Yes, ma'am. What you could do is you'd be able to charge the patient just whatever your normal fee is, and you could either file the claim as a non-assigned claim or give the patient a receipt and let them file their own insurance claim because you're not in network with that plan.
So is there an advantage for the provider or for the patient being out of network?
Well, from the patient, there's probably not an advantage because most of the time patients' policies will say that the patient has a higher deductible if they see an out-of-network provider. The insurance company would be sending the check to the patient. So from that perspective, I don't really see an advantage to the patient. From the provider, there's going to be times when you would want to take the assignment on the claim, especially if it's a larger claim like a surgery or something, because you would really don't want the insurance company sending the check to the patient who could use that on other bills or a trip to Vegas or Cancun instead of paying your bill.
Right. Oh boy, and that has happened, hasn't it?
Oh, it happens a lot.
Yeah.
And so many times that about 36 states out of the 50 states have a mandatory assignment law, meaning that if you accept assignment on a claim, even out of network, that the insurance company must honor that assignment and send the check to the provider instead of sending it to the patient.
So if I'm not credentialed and I don't have a contract with that insurance company, and let's pick on Blue Cross this time. I don't have a contract with Blue Cross and I'm seeing a patient who is out of network. How is it that I'm supposed to take assignment? I haven't signed anything that says that.
Well, when you file the claim, down at the bottom of the claim, you're marking whether you want the check sent to you or sent to the patient. That's called assignment.
Okay.
A lot of people mistakenly believe that assignment means that you're enrolling with the plan and agreeing to the plan's stipulations, but you're not. All it means is you're asking the insurance company to assign the check to you instead of to the patient. And you're not agreeing to anything else. The patient will still owe the full balance of what's left.
Okay, so you can still collect everything else that the insurance company, that Blue Cross, is not going to pay.
Yes, ma'am. And the problem is a lot of the billers out there and office managers, they don't recognize that. They think that somehow by accepting assignment that you're enrolling with the plan for this claim and you're agreeing that the allowed amount will be the total amount to be collected from everyone. And it's not the case. All you're doing is asking them to send you the check. And the patient still owes the full balance.
Okay. And so if I choose, since I have made myself, and this is all hypothetical here, I've made myself I've built my business as a cash business. I'm not billing insurance companies. So, but I'm seeing this person who has insurance. So I can bill that patient whatever I would choose to bill or whatever my fee is. I give that patient some kind of receipt, super bill, invoice, whatever I'm going to give them that shows the codes and whatnot. And then they can go and get reimbursed from their insurance company. Is
Yes,
that
ma'am. In fact, that's
okay?
the way it used to be all the time. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't until around 1990, 1991 when I remember that insurance carriers started enrolling providers and saying, okay, you have to file the claim to us, and we'll pay you, et cetera. Prior to that, when a patient went to a medical provider, the medical provider would give them what's called a super bill or a charge ticket or a fee slip, whatever they called it. And that's been around. I think the super bill was invented back around 1948. And that was a multi-part form where they would give the patient 2 copies of it. And then the patient would take 1 copy and attach it to an insurance claim and file their own insurance. I know the millennials and younger folks have never heard of anything like that, but that's the way it used to be the standard. And they would pay the medical provider at the time of service.
Right. The patient pays the medical provider at the time of service, which is
Like,
always the best way to do it if you are going to do a cash practice. And so one of the things before we started recording that you had mentioned that I was pretty that I wasn't aware of is you were talking about a case where someone billed out of network but weren't aware of the policy, or they were aware of the policy, so they were actually able to get a correction. Can you
exactly.
talk about that?
Yes, I've written different books on the federal ERISA law, ERISA, ERISA, Employee Retirement Income Security Act, and how it applies to insurance claims, more than 8 out of 10 insurance claims for commercial claims, commercial plans. And a friend of mine, by name of Zia Clarkson Rivera, Zia had filed a claim for an ambulatory surgical center over in Arizona. And it was a large claim. It was about $132,000 on this ASC claim. It was multiple surgeries on a child in a pediatric case. And it totaled up to about $132,000 in charges. And the insurance carrier originally paid $680 total. And Zia had been smart enough to check the patient's policy to see what the policy said, because the patient's policy always rules out over anything else. And the patient's policy said that the insurance plan would pay 50% of billed charges if this was to an out-of-network provider. And the ambulatory surgical center was out of network. So she knew this, and she knew that $680 wasn't the right amount. So she went ahead, sent a letter off to the CEO of the insurance carrier, said, here's a copy of the patient's policy where it says how much you should pay. You have 10 days to pay it properly, or we will report this to the U.S. Department of Labor, and that can get you and the employer in trouble. And she said less than 2 weeks later, she got a check for an additional $64,000 because she knew to follow the rules. So at times you want to make sure that you know what the patient's policy says, and you also want to make sure that your fees are set accordingly. Because had they had their fees all the way down to say $50,000, then the additional check would have been less than $24,000. So it does make a difference.
Right, right. So in terms of it's a real lesson. I mean, certainly if you are billing insurances, you should absolutely know what everybody's policy says and what they're covered for and for how much. But even as an out-of-network provider, if you're going to do this, you better read those policies
You
and check
definitely
that.
want to. One thing also that gets asked quite often is, if I'm out of network, am I restricted to billing the patient a certain fee? like the in-network rate or the allowed amount. And you're not. You're allowed to bill whatever you normally bill. And then people say, well, if I want to charge someone below because perhaps they're having financial difficulties, can I charge them below what the insurance carrier would normally pay? Yes, you can, because there's no restriction. In fact, right now, with inflation being somewhere between 9 to 14%, depending upon which liar in Washington, D.C. we happen to believe it today, you may want to give the patients all the kind of help you can, because a lot of patients are really hurting. And so you're not prohibited from charging them below Medicare or below the commercial insurance rate, whatever it is. Or you can charge them your regular fee. No one can say anything about it.
Okay, perfect. And so just to kind of summarize this a little bit. So if I'm an out-of-network provider, my options are to send an out-of-network claim to that insurance company, or to collect money from the patient and give them the receipt, invoice, bill, whatever, and let them collect their part.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
I am going to bill the insurance carrier as an out-of-network provider, I better know what the policy is as far as the reimbursement.
And you then have another choice to make. Do I want to file it as assigned or not assigned?
There you go. Okay. And what does that really mean? Oh, we talked about that already,
Again,
as far as the assigned and not assigned. And yeah, that's actually a very good point. You do not want to bill an insurance company and put the non-assigned, because you won't get that money.
many times, like you said, it'll end up going to the patient, and patient will spend it on a new television or some other medical bills or whatever they want to spend it on.
Yeah, let's go on a trip. That's right.
Well,
we can go to Greece this month. Okay, great. And I think that's great. So anything else on this before we wrap it up?
No, ma'am, just make sure that you really know what's going on with the patient's policies, because again, you may end up hurting the patient by not taking assignment or being out of network if they have a higher deductible. Give you an example, by the way. One thing we didn't bring up. Years ago, I had a Blue Cross Blue Shield policy. And we had, at that time, it was a high deductible plan because we were paying lower premiums. We had a $12,000 deductible for in-network. We had a $15,000 a year deductible for out-of-network. So that's something you may want to weigh with your patients and explain to the patients. Look, I understand this right here is you're going to be having a $15,000 out-of-network deductible. If you prefer, you can, which is something we've not even talked about at all. According to the Affordable Care Act, passed back in 2011, the patient has a right to waive their insurance at any time for any reason on any claim, meaning that they can withdraw from the medical provider permission to file the claim. Right. That means that you can treat that patient as strictly a cash patient for today's service if the patient elects to do so. And if they elect to do so, I highly recommend you have them sign something to protect yourself. So later, if anyone ever asks, yes, the patient elected to, not do insurance that day. And if that's the case, you can sit there and say, okay, we're going to do cash. Give you a good example. My wife needed an MRI, and the insurance deductible on it, right there, counting with our co-insurance, what it was going to be, and the deductible, we were going to have to pay $1,500 for that. And yet I asked him, I said, what's your cash price if I elected to pay cash today and waive my insurance? She said, well, I don't know that you can do that. I said, go get your supervisor. I can do that. And so the supervisor came up and I said, what's the cash price? She said, well, the cash price will be $700, but there won't be an insurance claim filed. And all we're going to do is give you a simple receipt. I said, okay, do that. And I saved $800 by doing that because this provider, well, regardless if they were in network or out of network, I still decided to do that on my own to be able to save some cash up front.
Right, right. But Don, this brings up another question. If I'm that cash practice, I don't have to have the person waive their insurance, do I? I'm not connected to that insurance plan. I'm not contracted. So we can just strictly take it as cash, and they can get that cash discount paying at the time of service, that prompt pay discount. And we don't have to even go there. We're not making a claim, but then the patient can also not take that claim, that receipt, and bill the insurance company to try and get reimbursed.
Exactly. And that's why you have the patient sign something stating, I will be filing insurance on this right here. It's going to be strictly cash.
Okay, excellent. That was a good point to bring up. All right. I think we're done with this topic today.
Fantastic. Sassy, do you have anything you want to add? I don't think she does.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you in our next video.
Bye-bye.